A major Windows security bubble will pop in a little over a year from now. We're going to go ahead and discuss some of the reasons and factors why this is going to happen. And as we discuss this going forward today on our Wednesday Windows Day, we're going to discuss what is going on in the Windows 11 world and the concerns leading us to the end of Windows 10. Thanks for checking out this video. If you like this type of content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. Give us a like and a comment down below. And with that, we're going to go ahead and dive on in. So what we wanted to talk about here is a big security bubble that is going to happen. And we are going to get to that at kind of the end of the video. But what we want to do is talk about some of the issues and problems furthering on in the latest Windows 11 24H2 update. Of course, we've discussed a few of those issues. It's taking up a ton of disk space you can't seem to get rid of. It does appear to be installing recall. Of course, Chris Titus just released another video recently where he does show us that it is there on the system, even though it doesn't appear to be anywhere in the system. So it's running in the background. Like I said, is that what that 9 gigabytes of undeletable data is? I don't know. But we're going to go ahead and have a look at a couple of internet articles here today. PC World broke this article, although I think that the Windows Report article is a little bit better. Well, let's go ahead and start with the PC World, though. And apparently for several people, the Windows 11 update is killing their internet connections. And it's not really clear exactly how. There are a number of people suggesting it's something with the DHCP client. There is people suggesting that it is with registry keys. There's some people suggesting it is something with the migration between the control panel and the settings. And it does appear that some people are able to resolve the issue by rolling back and others are not. It is a giant cluster, and that is kind of the issue. The reason I like the Windows Report one is it does give us a few more quotes, although we're going to go over to the forum and have a look at some. Effectively, what happened is some people have updated their Windows 11 to 24H2 and things were going just smoothly until they rebooted. Once people rebooted, the computer could find the network, would indicate it's connected, but had no internet. Upon further diagnosis, what they found is that the IP address started with a 169 digit. And if you know anything about how IP addresses are supposed to be assigned on a local network, that address should be starting with 192. So who knows what that address is going to. I don't know if we got that full address, so nobody can, look into exactly what's supposed to be going on here. But effectively, what the Windows Report article here says, so the entire network, when he first logged in, had no internet on either Wi-Fi or internet. Even with a manual IP address, it still doesn't work. At the stations, we had functional Windows at the first restart. After the second restart, we ended up in the same non-functioning situation. The only solution was to roll back to 23H2, so it is not a DHCP problem, nor could it be a DHCP problem, because even when you wanted to select the Wi-Fi network, the option did not appear, only Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi connection to select. Other people were reporting that the update removed the wireless icon. We have several machines that after the upgrade 24H2, the wireless connecting capability on the OS completely missing. It is missing from the system tray, also not able to connect from the network control panel. Configuring of static IP accomplishes nothing because the wireless will not connect, and it's a pretty horrendous problem for Microsoft to have inflicted on us. And yes, we have done complete resets and full reinstalls of all drivers. This is the first known article about the problem going back, about 14 days ago, 2 weeks ago from when this is like when 24H2 was first rolling out. After updating to the Windows 11 H2, I think he means Windows 11 24H2, some machines experienced network issues with both cable and Wi-Fi. They connect but don't give a network access or receive an IP address. They are receiving an IP address starting with 169. and resulting with no internet or network connection. I updated drivers, firmware, and reset the network settings. Machines' MAC addresses haven't changed. Does anyone know what could be causing this? Of course, there are 69 comments here. Somebody's getting screwed here. So first, let's go ahead and discuss, we've mentioned it, DHCP. This is the protocol in a modern computer which assigns the IP address. So you have internet coming from the WAN, the Worldwide Access, or the, was it Wide Access Network, I think it stands for. This is the internet that goes into your router. This is what has your public IP address. So every device on your home network has the same exact IP address. This is why every company, for privacy purposes, or lack of privacy purposes, we should say, is trying to force everybody to always be logged in on every single device they're using, because the public IP address is not useful information when you have a house of several people. You know, how does Comcast know which particular user they have to sue for pirating their, pirating material utilizing their internet? No, you have to tie it down to the user. This is why everybody's trying to force your logins, because when you log into the service, there's a lot more information that comes with that public IP address than just the IP address. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. You have your public IP address, which is assigned by the router, and then your router is going to distribute internet to all of the devices. So when the device connects to the router, in most cases, by default, the router automatically assigns IP addresses, which might mean your local IP address is going to change depending on different days or whatever else. It doesn't have to, but it might. And so you wake up in the morning, you turn on your phone's Wi-Fi, you connect to your Wi-Fi, and your phone is given an IP address. You know, you boot up your computer, it connects to your router, and your router assigns it an IP address. Well, it's possible to statically set those. So on my network here, I have a pfSense router, and my pfSense router I have set in the back end, and I have it set up so that some of the devices on my network, based on the MAC address, which is unique to each device, the MAC address calls a specific static IP address. So I do this because I have a NAS, for example, and all of the network shares I have are tied to the IP address, not necessarily a domain name. So I don't have to worry about other configurations and self-signed certificates and things like that. If you use the IP addresses, everything is fine. So I have certain devices in here which all are set to a static IP address. And this way, anytime they turn on, it has that IP address available, and I set it up in the router that way so the router doesn't assign that IP address to any other device. So once it's assigned, some people reading through this were saying if you assign the IP addresses on the router level, it seemed to work. But defining the static IP address on your IP tables in your computer apparently did not seem to work. Although even that, there's a little bit of conflict with this. So that's a little bit how the DHCP client is a client that's there to automatically manage the IP addresses on the router level to each individual device connecting to your router to provide it network access. Now, of course, you can also in your router say this thing can connect to the network resources but may not connect to the internet. That's something you can do with, home networks or corporate networks, whatever else. But going back and having a look at the comments, people were saying these guys have the same issue. They rolled back to 23H2. Some people were saying a rollback to 23H2 did not actually solve the problem. This guy says the workaround, the DHCP is having an issue. If you set a static IP address, it works. Apparently there's some issue with DHCP. This seems to be the biggest common solution. So before you'd roll back to the older version, which there are complications to doing that, and it will take a lot of time and risk some data loss, it's worth it to try and set a static IP address. I personally would try setting the static IP address based on the MAC address in your router rather than trying to set it on the computer, because the router might just say, hey, this is your IP address, deal with it. Whereas if it's something wrong with the DHCP, there's a little bit of communication between the multiple devices. This guy says he had the same problem when he logged in, no internet on Wi-Fi or Ethernet. Even the manual IP address, he says, still does not work. At the stations, they have the functional one. This is actually the one from the article, so we're not going to read the rest of that. This guy says we had several machines. After the upgrade, the wireless connectivity capability in OS is completely missing from the system tray and not able to connect from the network and control panel. Configuration of static IP address accomplishes nothing because the wireless will not connect. It's a pretty horrendous problem for Microsoft to have inflicted on us. I wonder if these people up here, they're using maybe a network cable setting a static IP address, whereas this guy down here that we just read, was that this one that we just read, they're trying to set a static IP address from the wireless. So I'm wondering if that's the conflict. Now, DHCP does not necessarily have anything to do with wireless, but it might have two servers. I know I can set a static IP address on a wireless network differently than I can set it on a wired network if I'm doing it on the machine. So this guy mentions IVP6 is working perfectly. This guy, let's see, there's, in speaking of the languages, I don't understand what is causing it. We attempted to roll back, but this guy says it did not work. Several machines bricked, requiring full rebuild from scratch. This guy is blocking 24H2. So BOA, okay, more people speaking non-English. These guys here are also enabling it. So same here, no network after upgrading. For us, it seems the problem is not DHCP. Network adapters are disabled in the control panel, but not in the device manager. So this is Microsoft is trying to get rid of the old control panel and move everything over into the device manager. It seems as though this might be one of the applications stuck in the transition. So it's not in the device manager. It is disabled in the control panel. Unable to enable it, says it enabled but returns back to disabled immediately. It stays for a while, it goes unable, so it'll stay a while, but as soon as they connect the Ethernet cable, it turns off seconds after that. Wi-Fi button is totally missing. All drivers and BIOS are up to date. Several machines are concerned. HP notebooks, HP desktop mini. Stop using HP, guys. Just stop it. We had to roll back 23H2 to get back a functional network. Surprisingly, every machine are not concerned for now, even if the same model. So it's like random. It's not like tied to the model of the computer. It's just random. Other people were, I think it was on page 2 or page 3, other people were suggesting some fixes inside of the registry. So if you, page 2, let's go page 3. There were some registry keys up here. There you go. This guy says the issue they had with the registry key, let's say maybe spoke to, this guy, he said he does let you know, he does let it work, and nope, spoke too soon, not shocked, but when we reboot the machine again after the initial internet was working, the registry key had gone back. So he's changing this. Maybe that's something you can do. Just change this registry key back to 3, and whenever you reboot your computer, just got to go in there and do that. Turn it back on. This guy says changing the value 3 is not working, however. And then there's a few other discussions on these. So there's a lot of complicated factors going on in this. Windows is doing a lot of weird things. They're pushing out these major updates that seem to break a large number of computers. They have a system in place that's not working to catch a lot of these. I mean, we didn't see any of these problems in the all of the preview tests. It's just when it gets rolled out to everybody. Now, why do we say, and when we start this article, talk about a security bubble? Well, the reason is because 1 year from now, I'm recording this on October 16th. On October 14th, 2025, 1 year from now, Windows 10 is going to stop releasing security updates. The problem with this is that still the majority of Windows computers are still running Windows 10. Most people that are not running Windows 10 would like to run Windows 10. They are forced onto Windows 11 because maybe they purchased a new system or something else forced them to update. Maybe their system updated and they couldn't roll back. But there are a number of people unhappy about Windows 11, but there are a number of people that are unhappy that Windows 10 is going to die. The problem is that they're basically killing off Windows way earlier than they should. They're not saying that we're going to kill it. It's not going to, in theory, stop working altogether. And they have said that, yes, you can pay for future support. But after having the computer for so long, are people going to want to foot out a bill to keep Windows 10? Most people, sadly, still running Windows 10 by that point in time are just going to keep running Windows 10. And if it doesn't get security updates, it doesn't get security updates. The problem is there are a lot of security issues inside of Windows. And so they go over looking at some of the 3 things about the end of Windows 10 support that are slightly different from the recent end of life. Number 1, a historically short time between when the operating system was replaced and when security updated. Windows 8 was replaced by Windows 10 in late 2015. Support ended January 2023. Windows 7 was replaced in late 2027, and support ended in 2020. Additional updates were paid and not officially available to end users. In both cases, that's a little over 7 years between the replacement and the retirement compared to just over 4 of Windows 10. So they're saying there's 3 years lacking in security in Windows 10 over Windows 11. Number 2, a historically large percent of user base are still actively using the fading operating system. So in September 2024, last month, suggests Windows 10 is still running on nearly 2/3 of all active Windows systems nationwide, compared to around 1/3 for Windows 11. Windows 8 was only running on 3% by January of 2022. Windows 7 on 35% of active PCs in January 2019. Which explained why Windows offered extended support. Windows 11 will close some of the gap over the next year, but it's possible that Windows 10 could still be the most used version of Windows when its mainstream support ends. And number 3, many Windows 10 PCs cannot officially be updated to Windows 11 because they don't meet system requirements, forcing e-waste or spending money in a bad economy that people would rather, buy eggs in the grocery store to eat, buy a new computer because Windows is forcing me to shut down. That is the circumstance Microsoft is pushing many people into right now, because when stuck with keeping a Windows 10 computer that will not get security updates and eating or upgrading to Windows 11 because they're forced to buy a new computer, not because their computer broke, but simply because the manufacturer is no longer supporting it. This raises some serious issues, A, with e-waste from a company that professes to want to save the planet, and B, hurting more people in a down economy when more people are taking out credit cards to buy basic household necessities. We don't need to be spending it over here. Now, they say exacerbating Windows 11 slow adoption is the fact that PCs released before 2018 or so simply can't run it without workarounds. There's really no precedent for this. Old version of Windows from roughly 3.1 to Vista were gated mostly by easy to understand things like hardware speed and capabilities. In other words, you upgraded your computer back in that era because the significant changes between computers were significant enough to compel you to buy a new computer. We don't have that now. If I go out and buy an upgraded processor, replace my whole computer, I spend $1,000, I replace my whole streaming computer with something better, I am not going to notice a significant performance boost. I'm not going to. Okay, now in my case, I'm running a streamlined operating system. I'm running Linux and everything is running smoothly and this computer is very snappy. I don't really notice a lot of the difference, but I mean, look at the computer I'm running right now for my media PC. That thing's like a 10-year-old computer now. I'm not sure that can run Windows 11. Not sure it will run Windows 10 well, but it runs Endeavor OS like a dream. And that leads us into our final thoughts here, is that as our world moves towards this death of Windows 10, well, over 2/3 of the people are still using that operating system. Even if it's more than half 1 year from now, and Windows simply stops releasing security updates, the vast majority of people are going to keep running an insecure system, which is going to open them up to a lot of scams, malware, and other forms of data leaks, which are going to be more damaging on the consumers. We are going to see that. And a lot of people are leery about switching to Windows 11 because Windows seems to be getting worse with every iteration. A, it's forcing things on it that people don't want. B, it is distracting you with constant ads and pop-ups and notifications to use new services that the operating system should not be doing. It's an operating system. It should stay completely out of your way and allow you to work. It should not be distracting you away from the work you're trying to do to remind you that, hey, maybe you should use one OneDrive because we see you haven't configured it. Maybe, Microsoft, if I haven't configured OneDrive, it's because I don't want it. Okay, the operating system should not be nagging me about that kind of stuff, but it does. And they're forcing AI into systems. Not everybody wants AI into their systems. And then, of course, they're releasing systems which have major bugs. Not being internet connected, actually for Windows 11, that's a feature, not a bug, okay? Because it's going to prevent Microsoft from collecting a lot of data about you. But the problem is most people turning on a computer probably need to get on the internet. So yeah, okay, it's a bug. I relent. However, it also eats up a lot of hard drive space. It is installing dystopian spyware software on your system by default, hidden in the operating system that you can only check if it's actually there and enabled with a command prompt. What in the world is going on? This is nuts. And this, guys, is why I started the channel Switch to Linux. We want to talk about switching to Linux, using a system that you control, having an operating system that you can manipulate and you can set to your configuration, you can do to your likings. I set mine up like an old classic Windows computer because I'm a boomer and that's the way I like to function. I don't want these fancy GNOME stuff, you know. Even Plasma's getting a little bit too advanced for me because I'm a boomer, right? No, not really, but my preference, of course, is still Cinnamon. But you can install Linux with a variety of code bases, with a variety of philosophies, with a variety of tweaks, with a variety of adjustments, and then you can control your themes the way you want it. And the reality is you don't have to switch your computer. You just have to switch the operating system running on your computer. Now, in many cases, there's going to be software you're going to have to change. In many cases, it's the same software. You know, every web browser is available on Linux the same way it is on Windows. Many of your mail clients you can use, and most people check their email over the internet these days, so that doesn't matter either. Unless you're working in a full-fledged, completely professional top 1% company, you can do with LibreOffice what you can do with Microsoft Office. And it's not even going to charge you an annual subscription fee. So that's actually a benefit. There's some tweaks you might need to do into your system to make sure that as you're sharing documents with everybody, it's all going to work out fine for you. However, all that being said, what is important for us is that we look at the all of the various factors here and you say, do you really have to keep using Windows? In some instances, the answer is yes. But if you say, I have to keep using Windows because I just don't know how to use Linux. Dude, just get out there and learn how to use Linux. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. You can pick up very simple things like, for example, this little upgrade kit. I bought it at Walmart, a PNY upgrade kit. It comes with let me just open this guy up here real quick. It just comes with an M2 drive here and a USB chip. You can install Linux on this little thing right here. This is actually what I'm using when you're seeing me do the live, like the Linux distros where I'm installing on a real hardware. I'm installing it on this. So I pick this guy up. I plug this guy into the system here. Okay, and then I install Linux onto this drive, and then I use it, and it works perfectly fine. If you came in here to use my computer, you would not know it is running on a device like this. And then when I'm done, I just pull this guy right out of the computer and restart the computer, and it, boom, goes back to the main operating system I'm having, which means you can keep your Windows around and learn how to use Linux. These are like $70. And if you're paying super close attention, note the drive that's in there is actually a Western Digital Blue, not the PNY. And the only reason for that is that I was told by the hardware guys that the PNY drive is probably a better drive for installing in my computer. So I just use the Western Digital for the one that's not mission critical stuff. But you can pick one of these up for $70. You can install Linux onto this, and you can use that like any other installed operating system. You can play around with it. You can learn how it works. You can test run software. So in 1 year from now, you can sit down and say, do I really want Windows 11? Or have I been working with this Linux really well for a year and it works great? And then you know what you can do? You can just take this drive out of that little USB chip and you can just plop it right on into the M2 slot in your computer. You can turn your computer on and it will not be any different. Okay, that's how easy it is to run Linux and to test Linux and to give it a try. That is how easy it is to do these things. And so I will encourage you, so that you don't get caught up in a security bubble and you don't get caught up with an operating system that kills your internet connection, eats your disk space, and spies on you perpetually and sends a bunch of data up to Microsoft servers on the regular. Just so you don't have to get caught up in all of that nonsense, I'm going to implore you to please test out Linux sometime in the near future. Last time, of course, we talked about this. We went over and talked about Linux Mint. That's my preference. I would send most people to Linux Mint. I do want to give some other Linux distributions some love here. So let's go ahead and tell you about another one that I really like. So this is MX Linux. After it verifies I'm really a human. So sure, Cloudflare, I'll verify I'm a human. Okay. I like using MX Linux. This is one of the ones that I use. My writing computer, which is a little tiny Lenovo, is it an S21E? Super low spec computer. It doesn't feel like it's low spec running MX Linux because this thing is fast. It works really well. I'm also using the Raspberry Pi version of MX Linux on my new Raspberry Pi 5. I installed Cinnamon on that, which is my favorite desktop. Now you'll notice Cinnamon is not in that list of desktops up here. The default is XFCE. They have a KDE and they have a Fluxbox build. Fluxbox is a window manager. It's a little bit more advanced if you're new to Linux. Don't play with Fluxbox. XFCE or KDE, both of those are going to be good. So you can test those out. And what I just simply did is I just installed Cinnamon on top of it, and it works like an absolute dream. In fact, if I didn't tell you you're doing this on a credit card sized little single board computer, you wouldn't know the difference. That's how fast MX Linux is on the Raspberry Pi. But we're talking about real hardware. So if you hit the download page, you can see these are the XFCE, and you have a couple different options here. This first one is the one that's going to apply to most people. This is the latest MX Linux for the modern computer. This one down here, if you are still running a 32-bit computer, then this one with the underscore 386, that is basically your code for a 32-bit computer. If this is a really old computer, that's the one you might want to try. You have the advanced hardware stack for much more recent hardware. If you have brand new hardware and you just want to switch it over, you might have better luck with this particular one here. And of course, the last one is for the Raspberry Pi. This is for the Pi 4, Pi 400, and the Pi 5. They do have the KDE version. I believe this is the advanced hardware stack. So the KDE version is good. And for the new user, I would probably not recommend the Fluxbox. Get used to the XFCE or KDE. Much better distros to go with. You can just go ahead and download it. You can download it directly or you can torrent it. There's a bunch of mirrors. And then they have information here. We talked about the importance of verifying an ISO. Now, somebody actually asked in the comments of a recent video about it. I gave a really long explanation that hopefully was useful. Let me go ahead and clarify this for now. If you have, do you need to verify it? First and foremost, if you download it with a torrent, the torrent client should actually verify it automatically. But just to be sure you can. Now, here's the reason why you would. On the less nefarious side, you might download it, but if you're transferring it maybe to a USB drive or something else to use it somewhere else, it may not transfer properly. I actually ran into that case when I installed Linux Mint onto the Windows 11 computer I bought for a friend to wipe it and install Linux Mint, which, by the way, he loves that computer. And older person, elderly man, loves that computer. He's like, the thing works awesome, because it doesn't constantly get in his way and stuff like that. So in this though, in that video, when I first went to install it, I first did the verification, and the verification failed. Well, what happened is I downloaded it on one computer, and then I moved it over to another computer to create the drive. When I moved it over to the other computer, the file got corrupted. And so the verification failed, and that told me something was wrong. I went back to the original computer, verified it over there, and it worked. So I retransferred the drive over. That's what caused the thing to verify. So it may not boot, it may not work, or it may work in an unstable form if the verification doesn't pass. So do that. On the nefarious side, there was a circumstance a few years back, this is going back almost a decade now, Linux Mint server was hacked. And somebody got into one of their mirrors and uploaded a malicious copy of Linux Mint. For 2 hours, they had a malicious copy of Linux Mint, which they caught really quickly and restored the correct versions. But anybody who downloaded that version and verified would not see a verified file. And so that is the importance of it on the nefarious end. So make sure you do verify it. They talk about how to make a USB stick, USB creators that have read-only image of ISO onto USB drive. So they have some USB image writers they're talking about here. If you want to create it on Windows, we suggest to use Rufus. We talked about Etcher last time. He recommends Rufus. And you can go ahead and download that, and he provides a direct link to Rufus. Some people like this one better than Etcher. Some people like Etcher better. So decide for yourself which one you want to go with. So you can just go ahead and download it here. This is all for Windows, so you can see that these are all going to work. If you're downloading these, I would recommend to download this portable one. Portable on Windows means it doesn't have to install. You just extract the file and you can execute it from wherever that file is. I like portable files for Windows better than I like installable ones, whereas the standard ones, they just install it. This one is if you have like an RT type tablet, an ARM64 tablet, that is for that version there, of course. The x86, this is your 32-bit system, and the x64 is your regular system. So they recommend Rufus. Very easy. Of course, just looking at the pictures here, you just select your drive, which is going to be your USB drive. You select the ISO image that you download, and then there's some options down here that'll show up. It won't say standard Windows installation. There'll be some options there. And then you hit the start button. It's going to copy your files over, and then you're going to have a correct. Here's actually one for doing Ubuntu. This is the ISO. There's partition selection, MBR. This is going to be closer to what MX Linux was going to look like. That's just, there is the option to download some ISOs directly. Like you could download Rufus and actually just download Ubuntu directly if you want to try Ubuntu out. And then here's how to install. Literally just plug the guy in there, boot the computer off of the USB drive and install. Now, that's going to overwrite your system. What I recommend if you're going to be using something like this upgrade kit I talked about, what I'd recommend, if possible, remove the drive from your computer first before you attempt an install. Always worth doing that. But there is MX Linux. I'd highly encourage you to check that one out as well. It's up there, a leading top distro of mine behind Linux Mint. So check them out. And that is at mxlinux.org. I will leave a link for that in the description of this video. So there are our thoughts concerning the latest Windows nonsense. Let us know your thoughts about all those. Subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Leave us a like and a comment down below.